When you look at the workforce landscape today, there's clearly just not enough people that are going to be able to fill all the positions that we have out there. And so we're going to have to implement technologies to help, supplement, whatever that's going to look like in the future. And so right now we're in that testing phase where we're looking at different models and how we integrate those. What I know you're going to see is those leaders that understand how to lead people are going to win in the workforce game. They're going to be the ones that are going to be able to successfully implement these technologies. They're going to be able to help you retain your people, and they're going to help you understand how to communicate in a way that we probably haven't had to do in leadership in a long time.
DJ, welcome to the show. How are you, my friend?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much for having me.
Good to see you. I feel like I'm going to get a presentation for you right now, and you're going to go to the whiteboard. You're going to map out all of these topics. You're going to give us a masterclass.
Well, maybe. I guess we'll see where the conversation goes, right?
No pressure. I'm only joking. Before we jump in, tell everyone a little bit about yourself personally and your journey to where we are today.
You bet. So I am actually coming to you today from balmy North Dakota in the United States. So the high today is -15. Ooh. So wherever you are, you're probably warmer than I am.
Yep.
Fun fact, just an FYI for everybody, it is 72 inside. And so really it is pretty nice if you just don't go outside right now. I've lived here pretty much my whole life. Have a wife, have 2 kids, one that just entered college. So it's a pretty exciting time in the Campbell household right now, lots of differences. In terms of my journey, I went to college and went into operations out of the gate and became a leader at a very, very young age, was way in over my head. And so I really became a student of HR, and probably about 8 years into that journey, decided that I needed to take a step back in the operations world and really figure out who I was as a person, how I was going to lead people differently, because I was really, really struggling. And so I became a student of HR and haven't turned back since. Currently serve here in Sanford Health as their chief HR officer. We've got around 60,000 employees within 26 different states in the United States. So it's a pretty fun job. There's always something fun and exciting to do. And so just honored to be here.
I love that. Tell everyone quickly a little bit more about Sanford Health, who just maybe perhaps if they're not aware of the organization.
You bet. So Sanford Health, we're a Midwest-based healthcare system. And so we have, of course, healthcare delivery. So major markets in North and South Dakota. And then we have a health plan and we have a long-term care arm. So we are around 60,000 employees strong right now. And just continue to grow. In the last 10 years, we have probably tripled in size. And so it's an exciting time to be part of the organization. Healthcare is really one of those industries that is changing daily.
Yeah.
When you talk about technology, when you talk about how we deliver care to patients, everything is changing truthfully on a daily basis right now. So it's a real exciting time, and there's lots of new stuff always coming at you.
Yeah. I love the fact that you look at change and transformation for a very positive lens. You kind of have to, right? Right as well. And if you want to be a CHRO in this day and age, that is just it's there's no end to that. It's constant change, innovation. You're constantly disrupting yourself as a leader, but also as an organization as well. And I love the fact that you were smiling and took joy from that, because that is really part of what makes it exciting, right?
I think 100%. And, working in healthcare through COVID, I think we realized that change is just going to continue to happen no matter what we do. And so, you get through COVID and then you go through tons of workforce issues. Now we've got AI that, so there's always just this, line of things that are coming at you. And so it's kind of like the old saying, you can laugh or cry. So let's laugh for sure. And then let's work on it together and get there.
Yeah. What's obviously there's a lot of buzzwords, a lot of things, you can't even open your screen now without seeing things around AI, but what's really top of mind for you right now, and front of mind for 2025?
Number one priority in 2025 for us, I think, is leadership development, and looking at how do we, integrate some of these technologies, but still keep that human touch for all of our staff. And I think, when you talk about AI and you see some of the things you can do when you've got 60,000 employees, understanding how that's going to affect all of them and how you message out how you're going to utilize that technology becomes pretty complicated and complex. And so ensuring that we've got those leaders on the front lines that are able to have that conversation and able to train, able to inspire, in being those change agents as we go through what I consider the next 5 to 10 years are going to be constant change within the workforce, and how we deliver care within the healthcare ecosystem. I think the second.
Go for it. Can we double down on that first? Yeah,
you like, go for it. Yeah.
You opened up the can there. I was like, don't jump to the second one. We got a lot.
So good.
Why did you and the team identify leadership development as such a key priority? Why is this so important?
When you look at the workforce landscape today, there's clearly just not enough people that are going to be able to fill all the positions that we have out there, and so we're going to have to implement technologies to help supplement whatever that might, whatever that's going to look like in the future. And so right now we're in that testing phase where we're looking at different models and how we integrate those. But I think what you're going to see is, and not what I think you're going to see, what I know you're going to see is those leaders that understand how to lead people are going to win in the workforce game. They're going to be the ones that are going to be able to successfully implement these technologies. They're going to be able to help you retain your people, they're going to help you understand how to communicate in a way that we probably haven't had to do in leadership in a long time. We constantly, I think in years past, have talked about, accountability. How do you drive results out of your people? How do you meet those business objectives? And now I think pre and post COVID, it's all about empathy, right? And so how do we meet our people where we're at? We got to be able to let them work from home. We've got to do all of these things. And so it's really it's an interesting message that we're giving to our leaders. We want them to hit the business results, but we want to do it maybe in a different way that we haven't done before. And so I think right now it's really just a level set for us. And how do you manage, the business while making sure that you're being true to your people and meeting them where they're at and making sure that they have the things that they need to be successful within the workplace.
Yeah.
And so it's been a good journey so far. We've got a ways to go, but I think we're on the right path.
Yeah. I think when I first became a leader, 20 years ago, what it means to be a leader now versus then has changed so dramatically. When you think about the leadership competencies, you mentioned, I think a second ago, leading with empathy. That wasn't something that came up in my that was mentioned in my training when I became a leader. What are some of the biggest shifts you've seen in leadership development versus when we both started in our careers versus what you're seeing now?
I think when I first started in my career, it was a lot of technical training, how to manage people, how to delegate tasks, how to, set expectations, how to follow up. Some of those, what I would consider more tactical skills in terms of, how you utilize those when you were working with your team. Now we hear things like emotional intelligence. I reference emotional intelligence all the time. I don't even know that existed when I first started as a leader. But it's a very, very powerful tool to be able to regulate yourself and be able to understand and regulate others in that moment when you have to really deliver what can sometimes be a difficult message or a key message to help build that business objective. And so I think that the competencies that we're looking for in leadership development are much more strategic in nature than they ever have been. And so we're talking about empathy, we're talking about emotional intelligence, we're talking about, how you inspire others, not just motivate them or incentivize them to do something, but how do you build them in a way that, they want to grow with the organization, where they find purpose and value within your mission and continue to want to, serve the people that you're serving within your organization. So I think the competencies, 20 years, in terms of difference are almost completely different. I think it'll be really interesting to see what those competencies look like, in the next 10 years, as I believe that technology is going to shift us even further and make us do things that I don't know that we've even really identified yet.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. And kind of leads me nicely to my next question. How do you think that technology and AI is going to impact leadership development?
I think it's going to be able to really help us understand the analytics of the people that we're serving. Probably about 3 years ago, we launched our first employee engagement survey here at Sanford. And we've tried many times, I think, in the past. And surveys are fun, right? So you send the survey out, and a year later, you go through all the data and you're analyzing and you're trying to figure out those actions. And by the time you've figured it out, the needs of the workforce have already changed. And of course, now we've invested in technology where we have live data as people are filling it out. And so from any time we can go through and look at how people are doing, who's participating, what are the demographics of the people that are participating. And so I think technology just really helps us understand that employee population in a way that we've never been able to do before. Being able to segment it based on tenure, age, position, job title, all of those things help us analyze and be able to implement actions that are really going to help and enhance change moving forward. So I think that technology training is going to be critical for all of those leaders, and how they utilize those, but still have that human touch. I think when you talk about an employee engagement survey, what you do with that information is much more important than the data that you collect from the survey itself. And so what are the actions that you're going to put in place, and how do you communicate that up to your team so that they know that what you're doing and what you're working on, you're actually following through on what you promised.
It's one of the most I think one of the things that people don't talk about enough, that point, because there's nothing more frustrating than giving your feedback and not hearing anything. Right. I think we've all experienced that in maybe previous companies, and the companies that I see are really being successful and building that a strong culture are ones that have the transparency to say, we hear you, this is what we're doing, and this is the why, and also this is not what but we can't do these things, and this is also why, right? Yep. Because that way, at least, because if you don't communicate anything, people's default is to think is going to be a negative default, right? But unfortunately, to that point, and to your point about technology, we also now have the tools to be able to create customized messaging that speaks to the individual. This is what it means to Chris, to your role, right? It's not this blanket statement where like maybe this one out of 20 things actually applies to me, and that's incredible, right? To create that employee experience which is now personalized. The same thing we've been doing for our customers in e-commerce and other areas for many years. We're finally bringing that consumer experience to our employee experience as well. But
finally, yes.
Yeah, but it is uncomfortable for companies because they're now actually having to be more transparent and open. But they're going to find out anyway, as well. So I love that you mentioned that point about ensuring that we use to communicate that in an effective way beyond traditional ways of doing it, and that's where we can leverage technology.
Absolutely. When you have five generations, 6 generations in the workforce, they all want to be communicated with differently. If you got those boomers, you don't need to meet with them as often. They just need an email. But the millennials or the Gen Xers, everybody's just a little bit different. And so how we utilize that technology to help facilitate those needs is very, very critical.
Yeah. And to your point, like what's important to me earlier in my career is very different to someone who's more at the end of their career of what really means to them. So maybe healthcare and benefits and other things like that may be more important to that person, right? Whereas to someone just joining the business, could be something different. It could be about flexibility. It's way more important to me early on as well. So what about technology in terms of leadership development, in terms of how you're leveraging technology to help upskill and prepare those leaders for I don't want to, I was about to say the future of work, but I just don't like saying that actually, because I feel like we're in it right now. the challenges that we currently face.
I think that when you talk about how we're going to upskill these employees to utilize the technology, I think it's understanding, I think a year and a half ago, and I believe that's kind of when we first heard about AI and when it hit the market, there's all of this information out there. And I think you had leaders or even employees thinking, is my job going to be replaced? How are we, what does the future of workforce look like, given that we've got this huge tool now that we can utilize to our benefit? And I think it's really understanding in positioning AI as a colleague, right? So it's your friend, it's your helper, it's somebody that can help you and make you more efficient and collect information for you and help you make better decisions. And so I think the first piece of technology is really helping people understand what it is. Let's introduce it to those folks that are maybe a little bit scared and have those really intentional conversations around this is the technology of the future. This is how it can be utilized in our workforce. And this is your role in it. so that we can begin to prep them for that, what we'll consider probably a fairly drastic change in the future. When we look at healthcare delivery, healthcare is a really interesting, I think, avenue to utilize some of this technology, and because it's so personalized, and because you're really affecting human lives day in and day out. And so how do you utilize the technology? Because I don't know any patient that would love to walk into a room and not have an actual bedside nurse there with you, but rather a TV screen with a person on there helping take your vitals or understand what things are going on there. And so it's a great mix for us in terms of how we implement that and how we utilize that.
Yeah.
And so I think, again, it's utilizing those learnings to help them understand how the technology we can use, what it's going to be used for, and to get them upskilled in terms of how to use it. But then also on the leadership development side, how do we begin to teach some of those soft skills that may be missing as we begin to go on this journey of utilizing this technology?
Yeah. Don't you think it's interesting that now we've kind of gone full circle where the AI is replacing a lot of the technical skills, so it's it's now the soft skills, which I don't even like that word soft skill. I feel like I like the word power skills, because I feel like soft skills has a sort of power skills are now becoming important more than ever as we start to replace a lot of these technical skills with technology and AI. That's now rising. I saw a report about the top skills for 2025, and there was hardly any technical skills on the list. So it's kind of like we've gone full circle. It's so interesting.
It's interesting because I think when you talk about technical skills, you can teach technical skills pretty much in the workplace. And I think on those, and I love that you said power skills. I'm going to start using that. Because I think when you do say soft skills, everyone's like, oh, those are the warm and fluffy ones that, maybe you might have to use those someday.
No, they're the most important. No.
They're the most important. And that they're really skills that have to be developed. I don't know that they can be taught. You can go through and you can tell people what they are, but it's really the application of those in the moment. And I wonder and I hope that utilizing some of this technology will be able to help us do that in a more effective way. And I think as you begin to look at the analytics you can pull from some of these different technologies, I think it gives you the understanding of how you can utilize those power skills in the moment in a more effective way.
Yeah. Where are you on that journey? Are you using any AI coaching tools? Any partners that you started working with to how far are you down that rabbit hole?
We've just started right now and are working with a number of different companies to figure out which ones we want to use and then how we want to use them. As you can imagine, as an organization of our size, there's a lot of things to consider, especially in
healthcare. The consequences are literally life and death compared to other companies. Yeah.
And I think technology moves probably a little slower in healthcare just because of, you've got patient information, of course you're dealing with human lives. And so we're probably a little bit further behind in terms of the technology that we're using right now. As I think the planning phases for us probably take a little longer than your average organization.
Yeah. I think I'm excited for the industry though, because I feel like there's so many areas areas ripe for innovation and disruption. Like a simple case recently, I went to my doctor, and it was a private healthcare company in the UK, and I was having my one-on-one with the doctor, and I just realized halfway through that there was an AI note taker on the desk. Because normally I always felt like in the past you don't feel like you're really present with the doctor because they're sitting there writing notes because they have to, and then they still have to then manually put those notes and type them in a system. So you're basically doubling up the work, but that was just the way things were done. And I felt like I was way more valued in that conversation. They were way more present and engaging, and I feel like I actually could have a better conversation, and they didn't have to worry about writing notes because they had an AI note taker on the desk. And I was like, and I asked her, they're like, yeah, it's been a game changer for me. It's like literally saved me an entire day and a half, a week of manual work that I was doing before, and my notes are obviously accurate. Because they're going straight from that straight into the system. And I was just like, such a simple thing, but game changer. It
is. We actually implemented something, about a year ago. And so we've got a few physicians, probably a handful of licenses within the system where they actually have an AI note-taking agent when they're meeting with the patient. It knows what to listen for, and it transcribes everything into our EMR, electronic medical records. And so not only does it save them time, but when you think about, some of those specialties where, they're busy, they're able to see 4 to 5 more patients per day. That's a huge game changer in terms of access. Another way that we're utilizing technology, North Dakota is a little bit rural. I don't know if you know that, but so we've got a lot of really small towns. And so in the past, if you needed, specialty care, you may end up going to a big city that maybe you don't have time or, resources to get out there. And so we've launched our virtual health centers. We have a virtual hospital now that's located in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. And so the plan will be that we will open virtual clinics in very small towns where we'll have telemedicine there. And so you'll be able to see a provider without, having to go and drive 100 miles to go get that level of care. And so we're definitely doubling down. It's a little slower for us, but I think what we're going to see in healthcare is just increased access, as we begin to use telemedicine and people understand how to do that. I think my 92-year-old grandpa, had an issue, and he can't go and drive. Really shouldn't probably drive anywhere, honestly. But going to a big city would have been, catastrophic, I think, for him, and having to navigate that.
It makes healthcare more accessible, equitable, right? And I've got, older generations and members of my family that just don't even want to go to a doctor, don't want to go to a hospital, but they need the help, right? But they would get it delivered, but they just don't want to go right? to somewhere as well. Even me, I live outside London now, and my doctor's like an hour and a half drive, and it just gets sent to my house now. And it's just so much easier to be able to do that. So, and I feel like COVID was a big accelerator of that, right? Because for years it had been a conversation, and there's all this red tape, and we can't do this for many reasons. And then when all of a sudden when you have no choice, look what happens, right? Those imaginary doors were broken down, and it happened, right? And now, like, even Uber delivers medication in certain countries now, which I didn't even know about until recently. I was like, wow, I get my medication delivered on Uber. I was like, what? It's crazy to be able to do that. What about what are your thoughts on how everything we just discussed is affecting the employee experience?
I think the employee experience is really, as we've gone into maybe some workforce struggles, specific, I think probably in the world, but for sure in the United States, I think understanding the employee population is become more critical. You mentioned it earlier, I think as an HR practitioner, there was a time where we just kind of guessed what people wanted and what we needed to do to retain them.
We think we know best.
Yes. And so you guess, and maybe some things land well and some things fall flat. But I think the technology that we have now helps us better understand what those things are. And it's going to change as you go through your life, right? And if you have kids, healthcare and childcare are probably at the forefront, and how you're able to afford that, and making sure that you've got somebody to take care of those kids when you're at work. But then when you get later in life, it's probably more healthcare related, and making sure that you've got healthcare, talking about the finances in terms of how you're going to retire. And so retention really means a lot of different things to a lot of very different people. And I think that's a huge benefit that we've seen in understanding, how we retain, that critical workforce that we have out there right now.
Yeah.
And I think it's made us much better decision makers as we implement different strategies to help build that. And I think you touched on it earlier as well. It's about being able to answer every question. If we're not going to be able to provide something, because that's really not within the scope of, what employment is. An example would be, are we going to start paying for childcare for people? That's probably not something that we can do today, but I think we owe that answer to them so that they understand and we're on the same page as we move forward, because I think that transparency helps build trust. And at the end of the day, building trust within the organization is the key driver to keeping people engaged and retaining.
It's everything. And you can spend years building it, and you can break it in a second. I think that's one of the things that people don't like. It takes a long time to build that trust. It only takes a moment to break that, right? And so it's just as important and refreshing to those employees to hear, oh, this is why we can't do this, and this is this is the reason why, than it is just to not discuss it because it's uncomfortable. Right? This is what we used to do. Yeah, even in the interviews I'm interviewing, a lot of people sort of entering the workplace for the first time, and they're challenging me way more than I ever expected, asking me questions in interviews about about connecting the business to their why, their purpose, right, their values, their what are we doing from a sustainability point of view, what are we doing from all of these things that it just wasn't a thing when I was younger that people are asking, and they're valuing their time, their flexibility, their well-being. We haven't spoke about that yet. All like those three things were not something that were they're like salary is coming like fourth on the list of priorities now. It's what I'm seeing anyway on my end, and that in itself is forcing us to rethink when we think about the word employee experience, right? It's changed completely.
It's from where it was when I started, even just in HR, to where it is today. It's completely different. It's much more complex, but it's, I think, more exciting because I think what I'm seeing is that we're actually figuring out how to engage people in a different way, and it's really it's fun, and it's exciting to see people get excited to go to work, because I think there was maybe in the last 10 years I think I've worked and I've felt like, wow, we're just continually fighting a losing battle. And I think this technology that we've been able to implement and utilize has really helped us understand that employee population a little bit differently. And I think the other thing maybe to talk about when it comes to that employee experience is utilize the technology for what it's out there, but continue to build whatever those employee listening strategies might be. And that might be, of course, a survey, but how are you connecting with your team? How often are you connecting with your team? Where is your senior leadership team at in terms of communicating with your frontline staff? So there's tons of other little things that I think you have to build to help build that entire strategy out. Yeah, you can. And I think organizations that understand that are the organizations that are going to win in the future.
I literally just spoke to a CHRO. I won't mention her name, but it's a very large retail company that you all know. And she just joined as a Chief People Officer, talking about 100,000 employees. And she spent the last 2 months on the road visiting every store.
Yep.
Right? To get to know the managers, the leaders, the staff, to truly understand, not just from sitting in the seat in the office, but going there on site, the hard way, on planes, traveling all over, to really, truly understand, right, and connect before she starts to implement any strategies and real change. And it just kind of was so refreshing, because like you can't replace that with technology. Some of it you can, just transactional pieces, but having the human in the loop is super important, and making sure we don't do that. And I see some companies that are going too far in one direction and not, the last thing we spoke about well-being, right? The last thing we need is someone asking a question around their well-being to an AI assistant that says, gives them the wrong advice, right? Or doesn't direct it to a human being. As well. DJ, before I let you go, because I wanted to ask you, like, what would be your parting advice to like HR leaders that are going to be sitting in your seat one day? What did you wish that you didn't know, that you know now that you didn't know back then when you're just getting started?
I think probably two things. First, I would encourage everybody to listen. I think that's a lost skill in today's art. We all want to have our voice, we all want to be heard, and we all want to stage, especially in some of these, in that C-suite. But I've learned being the best listener helps you make the best decisions when you understand and you have multiple perspectives to make those decisions from. And I'm full transparency, that's probably not one of my strengths, listening. I'm more of a go-doer. I'm an action taker. And so I have to be very, very intentional to slow down.
I'm with you on that, by the way.
Make sure. Yes.
Me too. Yeah. My founder would tell you that. My co-founder would tell you that as well. Yeah. And
the other thing that I would say is really just to, the other thing I would say is just to be curious. everybody's got a perspective, everybody's got a point. So once you're able to sit down and listen, make sure you ask the right questions to dig deep and figure out, what's really driving what you're seeing in the workforce, within the workplace, with the certain employee. Be curious and not judgmental. I think Walt Whitman said it, but I found it from Ted Lasso, and so I take a lot of.
I love a Ted Lasso quote.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
that's another one, right? Like we didn't discuss, and is building a culture of curiosity is something that I don't hear enough as well, which is super important. And again, we'll be thrown into that class of soft skills, which is now one of the most important skills is curiosity. In an age where we replace many processes and things with AI, and you can get answers to any question, it kind of removes that curiosity from because you didn't have to be curious to find it. It just served it up. But listen, I could talk to you forever, but I've got to let you go. Where can people reach you if they want to reach out and say hi? If they want to connect with you?
Absolutely. LinkedIn's probably the best. I've got my profile's out there, DJ Campbell, and look it up and definitely shoot me a message. Would love to connect and chat with anybody who's interested in talking about, the future of workforce and the future of leadership. So
I appreciate you. And thanks for taking the time to come on the show.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.